People often expect wisdom to arrive with a loud voice, a dramatic announcement, or a perfectly packaged quote meant to go viral. They expect it to sound like certainty. But sometimes the most powerful lessons come quietly, from someone who has lived long enough to know that life rarely unfolds according to plan, and that strength is often built in silence. When Elon Musk's mother speaks, many expect stories about genius, ambition, or extraordinary success. What they don't expect is how deeply human, grounded, and unexpectedly comforting her message is. She doesn't begin with grand theories or complex ideas. She begins with life as it is. Messy. Unfair. Unpredictable. She talks about raising children without money. About moving cities and countries, about starting over when most people believe it's already too late. And in doing so, she quietly dismantles one of the biggest lies people carry, that there is a correct timeline for success, happiness, or fulfillment. Her lesson isn't about becoming extraordinary overnight. It's about refusing to give up on yourself just because the world thinks you should have already figured everything out. She reminds people that struggle is not a sign of failure, but a sign of movement. If you are struggling, it means you are still in the game. She speaks about how easy it is to look at successful people and assume their lives were smooth, guided by luck or privilege. But behind every visible success is a long stretch of invisible endurance. Long years where no one applauded. Long days where doubt was louder than hope. Long nights where quitting felt reasonable. Her life, she explains, wasn't a straight line upward. It was a series of restarts, each one requiring courage she didn't know she had until she needed it. One of the most unexpected parts of her message is how openly she talks about fear. Not as something to be eliminated, but as something to be understood. Fear, she says, doesn't disappear when you do the right thing. It disappears only after you do the hard thing enough times that fear realizes it no longer controls you. Waiting to feel confident before acting is a trap. Confidence is built through action, not before it. She tells people not to waste years trying to impress those who do not understand them. Approval is a poor substitute for self-respect. You can do everything right and still be criticized. You can play it safe and still be judged. So you might as well live in a way that feels honest to you. Her life taught her that the people who judge you the loudest often disappear when you need support the most. Another lesson she shares, one that surprises many, is about starting late. Society loves prodigies. It celebrates early success and youthful achievement. But she stands as living proof that starting late is not a disadvantage, it is simply a different starting point. Reinvention, she says, is not a failure of the past but a response to the present. You are allowed to change direction. You are allowed to want something different. You are allowed to outgrow the version of yourself that once made sense. She talks about working hard not because it guarantees success, but because it builds self-trust. When you know you can rely on yourself to show up, to learn, to keep going, life becomes less frightening. You stop fearing uncertainty because you trust your ability to handle it. That trust, she explains, is worth more than talent. There is also a deep humility in her message. She does not present herself as someone who had all the answers. She made mistakes. She stayed in situations longer than she should have. She doubted herself more than she admits she should have. But instead of hiding those moments, she brings them forward as proof that imperfection does not disqualify you from a meaningful life. She encourages people to stop waiting for permission. No one is coming to hand you a certificate that says you are ready. Readiness is something you decide, not something you receive. The world rewards those who take responsibility for their own direction, even when they feel unsure. One of the most touching elements of her lesson is how she reframes hardship. Hard times, she says, do not make you bitter unless you let them. They can make you wiser, kinder, and more patient if you choose to learn rather than resent. She believes that resilience is built not by avoiding pain, but by facing it honestly and continuing anyway. She also speaks about the importance of surrounding yourself with people who believe in growth rather than limitation. Not everyone will understand your journey, and that's okay. Some people are meant to walk with you for only a season. Their inability to see your potential does not reduce its existence. Her message carries a quiet reminder that comparison is one of the fastest ways to lose joy. There will always be someone ahead of you and someone behind you. Measuring your life against someone else's timeline is a guaranteed way to feel inadequate. Your only real comparison is who you were yesterday. She doesn't romanticize struggle, but she doesn't fear it either. She sees it as part of the cost of becoming. Every meaningful life, she says, demands something from you. Comfort is rarely the place where growth happens. Perhaps the most unexpected lesson she shares is about kindness toward yourself. She speaks gently about self-criticism and how destructive it can be. You can be disciplined without being cruel. You can strive for better without hating where you are now. Progress fueled by self-respect lasts longer than progress fueled by shame. She reminds people that life is not a performance. You don't owe the world an explanation for your choices. You owe yourself honesty. If something drains your spirit, pay attention. If something lights you up, honor it. Those signals matter more than opinions. As she speaks, it becomes clear that her wisdom is not theoretical. It is lived. It comes from decades of navigating uncertainty, rebuilding confidence, and choosing hope even when it wasn't fashionable or easy. Her lesson lands softly but stays heavy in the mind. You realize that success is not the absence of struggle but the ability to continue despite it. That self-belief is not arrogance but survival. That patience is not weakness but strength in disguise. She leaves people with the understanding that your story is still being written. No matter your age, your past, or your current circumstances, there is room for change. The future is not reserved for the fearless, it belongs to those who act despite fear. In a world obsessed with instant results and overnight success, her message feels almost radical in its simplicity. Keep going. Keep learning. Be kind to yourself. Trust that small, consistent effort compounds into something meaningful, and perhaps that is why her lesson resonates so deeply. It doesn't promise fame or fortune. It promises something far more valuable, the freedom to believe in yourself long enough for life to meet you halfway. She shows that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, telling you to stand up one more time, to try again, to trust that you are not behind, broken, or too late. Her life, and the lesson she shares, quietly reminds you that becoming is a lifelong process. And that is not something to fear. It is something to embrace, because the most unexpected truth she offers is this: you don't need to be extraordinary to live an extraordinary life. You only need the courage to keep moving forward, even when the path is unclear, and the patience to let your efforts shape who you become. That lesson lingers long after the words are spoken, settling into the spaces where doubt once lived, gently replacing it with something steadier. Hope, confidence, and the calm understanding that you are allowed to grow at your own pace. She also speaks quietly about dignity, something rarely discussed in conversations about success. Dignity, she believes, is not about status or wealth, but about how you treat yourself when no one is watching. It is about refusing to abandon your values just to fit in or get ahead. She learned early that losing yourself costs far more than losing money or opportunities. You can rebuild finances. You can rebuild careers. But rebuilding self-respect is much harder once it's compromised. Her life taught her that endurance is underrated. People celebrate brilliance, speed, and bold moves, but endurance is what carries you through the long middle where dreams feel distant and progress feels slow. Endurance is waking up and doing what needs to be done even when motivation is absent. It is choosing responsibility over excuses. It is continuing to show up for your life even when applause is nowhere to be found. She reflects on motherhood not as a role of control, but of trust. She trusted her children to explore their interests, to fail, to struggle, and to learn. Protection has its place, she says, but overprotection can quietly steal confidence. Letting people try, stumble, and grow is one of the greatest gifts you can give them. Strength develops when people are allowed to discover what they are capable of. Another unexpected layer of her message is how she views criticism. Criticism, she explains, often says more about the critic than the person being criticized. If you are doing something unusual, ambitious, or different, criticism is inevitable. Silence usually means you are blending in. Growth attracts resistance. Instead of asking how to avoid criticism, she suggests asking whether you are living truthfully. She talks about simplicity in a world obsessed with excess. You don't need everything to start. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need universal support. Most progress begins with limited resources and imperfect plans. Waiting for ideal circumstances is another way people delay living. She learned to work with what she had, where she was, and trust that clarity would grow along the way. She also reminds people that failure is rarely final. Most failures are information, not verdicts. They show you what doesn't work, what needs adjustment, and where you still need to grow. Taking failure personally drains energy that could be used to improve. When you detach your worth from outcomes, you become more resilient and more willing to try again. Her words carry a deep respect for time. Time, she says, is neutral. It doesn't punish you for starting late or reward you for starting early. It simply responds to consistency. Small actions repeated patiently shape outcomes more reliably than dramatic bursts of effort followed by burnout. She urges people to think in years, not days. She speaks about loneliness as an unexpected companion on unconventional paths. When you choose something different, you may feel isolated for a while. That doesn't mean you are wrong. It often means you are early. Not everyone can see what you see yet. Learning to be comfortable with solitude, she believes, is a skill that protects your vision. She emphasizes gratitude, not as denial of hardship, but as balance. Gratitude doesn't erase problems, but it prevents problems from becoming your entire identity. Recognizing what is still good gives you emotional fuel to address what isn't. She also talks about aging in a way that surprises people. Growing older, she says, is not about becoming less relevant. It's about becoming less afraid. With time comes perspective. You realize how many things you worried about never truly mattered. You stop shrinking yourself to meet expectations that were never meant for you. Her lesson continues to unfold in subtle ways. She doesn't ask people to chase greatness. She asks them to live with intention. To choose effort over comfort, honesty over approval, and patience over panic. She leaves the impression that life rewards those who respect the process. The process of learning, failing, adapting, and continuing. Skipping it only creates fragility. Embracing it creates strength, and so her message keeps echoing, especially for those who feel behind, unseen, or uncertain. You are not broken. You are not late. You are in motion. Keep building. Keep believing. Keep becoming, because the quiet truth she offers is this: a meaningful life is not created by sudden breakthroughs, but by thousands of small, brave decisions made when no one is watching. She also speaks about courage in a way that removes its drama. Courage, in her experience, is rarely a single heroic moment. It is a series of ordinary decisions made consistently over time. Choosing to speak when silence feels safer. Choosing to try when quitting would be easier. Choosing to hope when evidence is thin. Courage is not loud. It is persistent. She learned that resentment is heavy luggage. Carrying it slows progress and clouds judgment. Forgiveness, she says, is not about excusing harm but about freeing yourself from reliving it. Letting go does not change the past, but it changes how much power the past has over you. She encourages people to listen to their inner voice, especially when it contradicts popular opinion. Trends change. Approval shifts. What remains is the quiet sense of alignment you feel when you live in a way that matches your values. Ignoring that voice may bring temporary comfort, but it often leads to long-term regret. She reflects on money with surprising honesty. Money, she explains, is a tool, not a measure of worth. Having little taught her creativity and discipline. Having more later taught her responsibility. Neither state defined her. Chasing money without purpose leaves people empty, but using money to support meaningful work and independence creates peace. She also challenges the idea that confidence means certainty. True confidence, she believes, is the willingness to move forward without guarantees. Life rarely provides clarity before action. Most clarity arrives after you begin. Waiting to feel ready keeps many people stuck at the starting line. She talks about health, not as perfection, but as respect for the body that carries your ambitions. Rest is not laziness. Balance is not weakness. Sustainable effort requires care. Burning yourself out does not prove dedication, it only shortens the journey. She speaks about legacy in a grounded way. Legacy is not about how many people know your name. It's about how many lives are better because you showed up with integrity. The way you treat people when you have nothing to gain says more about you than any achievement. She reminds people that joy is allowed, even during struggle. You don't have to postpone happiness until everything is resolved. Small moments of joy are not distractions, they are nourishment. They keep the spirit strong enough to continue. Her perspective reframes uncertainty as possibility. When nothing is guaranteed, everything is still open. Fear sees uncertainty as threat. Growth sees it as space. She emphasizes learning as a lifelong habit. Curiosity keeps the mind flexible and the heart young. The moment you believe you know enough is the moment growth slows. Staying curious keeps you adaptable in a changing world. She talks about humility as strength. Being willing to learn from anyone, regardless of status, expands wisdom. Arrogance isolates. Humility connects. As her lesson unfolds, it becomes clear that her wisdom was earned, not inherited. It was shaped by responsibility, loss, reinvention, and patience. Nothing about it is accidental. She offers no shortcuts, no formulas, no guarantees. What she offers is steadiness. A reminder that life responds to those who remain engaged with it. For anyone feeling overwhelmed by the noise of expectations, her words offer relief. You don't have to become someone else to succeed. You don't have to rush. You don't have to pretend. You only have to keep choosing what feels honest, even when it's uncomfortable, and in that honesty, Life slowly begins to meet you with opportunities, clarity, and confidence you couldn't have forced. The lesson continues quietly, long after the conversation ends, reminding you that becoming yourself is not a destination, but a practice. One day at a time, one choice at a time. That is how meaningful lives are built. Toward the end of her reflection, she speaks with a calm certainty that only experience can bring. Life, she says, is not waiting for you to become fearless, perfect, or endlessly confident. It is responding to how honestly you show up right now. The pressure people place on themselves to have everything figured out often becomes the very thing that keeps them stuck. She reminds people that it is possible to be serious about your goals without being harsh with yourself. Discipline does not require self-punishment. Growth does not require suffering for its own sake. Progress guided by self-respect is steadier, healthier, and far more enduring. She acknowledges that there will be seasons when effort seems invisible. Times when you are doing everything you can and still nothing appears to move. Those seasons, she says, are not wasted. They are strengthening muscles you cannot yet see. Patience during those moments is not passive, it is an active form of faith in yourself. She speaks about hope not as blind optimism, but as a decision. Hope is choosing to believe that your actions matter, even when outcomes are uncertain. It is refusing to let temporary setbacks define permanent conclusions. She encourages people to stop shrinking their dreams to match other people's comfort. Your life is not meant to fit neatly into someone else's expectations. Discomfort is often a sign that you are growing beyond familiar limits. She also speaks gently about endings. Some chapters close without apology or explanation. Not everything is meant to last forever. Letting go is not weakness, it is wisdom. Making space allows something new to arrive. Her final message feels less like advice and more like reassurance. You are doing better than you think. You have survived more than you remember. You are stronger than your doubts suggest. She leaves people with a sense of calm resolve. There is no rush. No race. No invisible scoreboard measuring your worth. There is only the quiet responsibility of living in alignment with who you are becoming, and that, perhaps, is the most unexpected lesson of all. Life is not asking you to impress the world, it is asking you to trust yourself, to keep learning, to keep moving, to keep choosing courage in small, ordinary ways, because in the end, it is not the loud moments that define a life, but the steady ones. The choices you make when no one is applauding. The effort you give when results are delayed. The kindness you show yourself when progress feels slow. That is where real strength lives, and that is the lesson she leaves behind, not as a command, but as an invitation to believe that your life, exactly as it is unfolding, is still full of possibility, still worthy of patience, still deserving of hope.